We're good.
Well, good afternoon. Bob Spitz here with Drive in our Facebook live show. And today I have a very special guest, and that's Tony Wisler, my partner.
Hey.
And the reason we're doing it this way is because we want to talk about a new service that we launched at the Expo that I'm pretty excited about. And Tony is taking the bull by the horns, and he's leading the charge on this new service. And Tony, what is this new service?
Well, it's a club, which I love this idea. I don't think we've ever done this before. It's the Playbook Master Club. So it's a service, but it's not a workshop. It's not, while we do like to talk about people in workshops having a lot of communication, this is going even deeper. This is going to be like a lot of peer, you're a member of the club. So you come out, and we do it once a month, and you come in, we do it via Zoom. It is an online service, and we all hang out and we talk about issues between the two. Have probably, I think, 18 people that are members.
Fantastic. I didn't know it had grown that much that fast.
Yeah,
but Tony, let's back it up a little bit for those who might not be familiar with the concept of a playbook in business. I found this really fascinating when I was first researching it, because when I think playbook, I thought football.
Yeah, me too.
Football, you have a playbook, and you've got to learn that playbook, and these are our plays. And adopting that concept into business is really smart, because you need more than just a policy and procedure manual or just a policy manual. Because too many times, Tony, I've seen policy manuals that shops have purchased from a company, and they protect them legally, but they don't help anybody run the shop.
Right.
Where a playbook, I think, is more aptly named the How Do We Do Stuff book.
I absolutely agree. That's it for me. When I'm also the one who, for the last year or so, has been the one who instructs the developing the playbook workshop, the master workshop. And the thing that I always like to tell anyone who's dealing with this concept is it's a suppository of every place that you want to have all of your information. Anything that you want your team to know should be in there.
Yeah, and it's right from onboarding on, isn't it?
Absolutely. And the thing that I like it the most is, first of all, when you have everything in writing, what you create is an employee who is actually, like we like to use the term here at Drive, operational. They're a person who can operate without you having to look over them. A person becomes more responsible when they can have access to the material. They can make their own choices. And because if they know what they're supposed to do and they know how you want them to do it, they don't have to keep coming to you all the time asking what to do. I mean, there are owners that probably spend half their day telling their employees what to do. And if you have a really good playbook, they can go find out for themselves. And if they have to go find out what you want them to do because it's there in writing, it raises their responsibility level. And you create a team of people who are actually wanting to make the shop better in their own right and not just be ran by you.
Well, I think it's also critical for a shop owner to stop and think about their business. Everything from what's their business philosophy, how do they look at business, to the history of this shop. How did this shop start? Why did this shop start? Which ties into their business philosophy. So that when you bring somebody new on board, they feel a sense of continuity, a sense of what this business is.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree. And it creates a consistency, because when you write something, you can go back and look at it and you can see where it might not precisely align with something else you wrote, because it's still there. If you're just telling people stuff to do all the time, hey you, hey you, hey you, then you don't even necessarily know when you're not being completely consistent or have continuity. And I think that helps. I also think that if you're a shop out there and you're having some difficulty, like recruiting, even like you go, well, what does a playbook have to do with recruiting? I can tell you, if you have a really laid out playbook people who are they like to have order, who have something very orderly, a really good master tech in an environment that has some order to it, and a playbook will do that. And I think that it's a very good piece. And like you were saying, for onboarding, oh my gosh, you can onboard somebody with lightning speed and efficiency if you have everything in a playbook.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Now, it's one thing to have a on paper, oh, and my internet connection suddenly became unstable. Hopefully you don't lose me.
Okay.
One thing to have a published, written, on paper playbook that you hand to a new employee and hope they read it. And if you need to update something or revise something, it becomes a bit of a chore if you've published this paper-wise. And using the Playbook app, isn't there?
Yeah, the Playbook app is wonderful for that issue, because one of the things we've taught our clients for years is when you finally author a policy and you want to get it implemented, you make copies of it on paper, and then you distribute it to everybody in the weekly meeting, and then you read it to everybody, and then you get their feedback, and that's how you get their buy-in. And that's wonderful and everything. And then maybe you gave them a 3-ring binder that they put that policy in anytime you do this. And so everybody has their own copy of this thing. And now let's say you decide, oh, there was a missing semicolon in that policy, I want to change it. Well, now what are you going to do? You got to go back and you got to change it. And then you're like having to redistribute everything. That becomes pretty unwieldy. With a Playbook app, everything is in that environment. And if you want to make a change or revise a policy, it revises, and then you've shared it with those particular employees. That revision is instantaneous. And so
Right,
you
they
let
have
them
it.
know they have it immediately, like because it just changes in their environment as well. They can go and look at it. And that is one of the greatest things about a digital age, I think, is that that's the one thing that makes it easy. The other thing I like too is you don't have to show every single thing you ever wrote about your business to every single person who you want to have access to the playbook. You can actually really tailor who you want to have what. You don't necessarily need to share financial policies with your technicians. They probably they have no interest in it anyway, you know? And so you can actually, that's one of the powerful things about the app as well, is you can actually really slice it thin, and you can add just what you want each employee to have and to be able to read and study.
So
And
then a
also,
shop can actually have multiple playbooks.
absolutely. I like to think of them as sub playbooks. Like you can have the big overall playbook, and within that you have different playbooks for each area of your shop.
Each position.
Yeah, exactly. You can do that as well. And one of the things that we have, not to get too in the weeds on it, but there's something called roles that exists within playbook, and you can set those. You can create those, and I always recommend that they actually follow the job title, so that you can put anything you want that job title to have. There's policies you're going to write that you only want the technicians to have, so they go into that. And so yeah, it's so powerful. And the thing to do is, what I would just say is, if you're kind of wondering exactly what I'm talking about right now, I say come join the club, because we get deep into it.
Yeah. Now the club has only had the first couple of meetings. How has it been going?
I think it's been going really well. We've had some people that are very active. They have a lot of questions, and one of the things I really like about the club is not only do they have a lot of questions, but I have some answers. But other people have answers too, because there, like, when it comes to a very robust application, there's many ways to skin a cat. And I would be like, oh, well, this is a good way for you to do this. And then maybe one of our clients pipes up and he says, no, I think there's a little bit of a more, there's a little quicker way to do that. And then they had figured it out because they've been playing with it. And so it's almost like a brain trust of people that have been using the app. And let me tell you something, when you get a bunch of people in a room that are using an app, the swiftest and best way to manage that app is going to come to the surface. And it's great to have all those minds working together.
Yeah. It's interesting, as a shop goes through the stages, their whole understanding of the business changes so radically. Because, in a stage one shop, it's one big job. You're doing everything.
That's right.
Right. And it's hard unless you've identified all the different positions you hold, all the different hats you wear. It's hard to separate those out and turn them over to someone else. Same thing when you get into a position when you have a service advisor who also happens to be your receptionist.
Mhm.
They're doing the sales, they're maybe dispatching the work, they're handling the parts, they're doing
Yep.
cashier duties, they're doing follow-up marketing. They're wearing a lot of different hats. That's not just one big, it is one big job at a certain stage, but as you grow, you've got to be able to take those apart and turn
Yep. Looks like we lost you a little bit there, Bob. Are you still with me?
somebody else so
Mhm.
somebody else can. Oh, am I lost? Did
No,
you
you're
lose
good.
me?
No, you're back. But I think I know where you're going with this. Um, and that's one of the things I like about the app. That's very another kind of a specific thing. You can slice it so thin that you can create each of those different jobs and you can assign them to the one individual who's doing them. And so, like you were saying, a service advisor, he's doing reception, or he or she is doing reception, he's selling service, he's ordering the parts, and he's dispatching the work. Well, if you create it this playbook where you have a receptionist, a service advisor, a parts person, and a dispatcher, you can assign those roles to that individual, that one individual. And that's what I really love. And then as the business grows, you will just peel those things away and give them to somebody else. You end up hiring a couple of service advisors, and then you eventually want to hire a receptionist or something. You just peel that reception out of those service advisor roles, and that makes it's so expandable, I guess is the right word, the way the app works. You can tailor it right from the beginning, and then and as the business expands, it's very easy to make those modifications. And so that, yeah, I hope that answered your question, because you did break up a little bit there.
Yes, no, that's exactly right. And it's something that every shop, if they don't do it that way, they get stuck with these positions forever.
Exactly. You either turn it over or you do it. Those are the only two
Those are
choices.
choices,
You
and
know.
if your goal is to be a remote owner, stage 4 type owner, by golly, there's a certain path you've got to walk down. I'm not saying it's an easy path. I'm not saying there isn't due diligence there, but it's very doable.
Right.
It's one step at a time, and you can most certainly get there.
Right. And I like to tell the clients, just because you have certainty on what you need to do does not, we're not promising that it isn't hard work. There's
Right.
sometimes you go, well, I thought this was going to be easy. No, it's like, but when there's always going to be hard work. But it's kind of funny. It's like climbing Mount Everest or something. People like to climb Mount Everest because they know exactly where the top is, and it's really hard work, but they know where they're going.
Right.
And that's the key. If you know where you're going, you can really dig into that hard work, and that hard work can become incredibly rewarding. But if you're sitting there not knowing what to do, then it becomes just stress. That's part of what I think where a lot of stress with owners is that they don't know what to do. And so we're not saying it's going to be easier. We're just saying that this is the path and this is what you need to do. And once you feel confident, you know what you're doing, then you're just going to dive in, because I've never met a shop owner yet that wasn't that type of personality. I've
That's
never
right.
met a shop owner that wanted to sit on the front porch and drink mint juleps all day.
No, not too many like that.
Nope.
Now, one of the things that I think the app, and I've heard this from shop owners, is so beneficial and so helpful is we have a number of templates in the app in the form of documents and in form of files. In fact, we have well over 1,500 that they can adopt. They don't have to dream up. They want a policy on no smoking, or a policy on cell phone use, or a policy on really almost anything. They can find in the Playbook app a sample.
Correct. And that is one of the greatest things about it, because if you have an idea that, oh, I should write a policy on this, well, you can sit down and like create something out of whole cloth, or you can go look and you look in the templates, and if you find that template that we have the application set up in such a way that you simply copy it and then you read it, and if it's perfect just the way that Drive wrote it, then go ahead and just use it, publish it. But if you go, well, this 90% what I need, but that doesn't really make sense, I need to, then you can tailor it to your shop. Then it's not just a shop in a box kind of a piece of policy. You can actually tailor it to your business, and you just
Yeah,
make
it's
those
just a
slight
couple of edits.
modifications. Yeah,
Change
exactly.
of a word here, a change of a word there,
Yep.
maybe an additional paragraph or take out a paragraph. It's so much. And for those who enjoy creating from whole cloth, dun, 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 there's the Chat GPT function.
Yes. Yes. For you guys who want to start dipping your toe in the artificial intelligence world, I've played with Chat GPT a lot. It's a lot of fun. And if you need to build something and you just go, wow, I'm not a writer like you. I'm not a writer. I'm a technician. I don't know how to write. If that's what you're thinking, then just go ahead and use that feature as well. And it will actually drop it right in there. And then you can again read it. Of course, I'm going to say
Oh
never,
yeah, you always
never,
have to read what the chat wrote.
never publish anything from Chat GPT until you've read it and you've proofed it and you're happy with it, because you never know
Yeah,
what.
it could add some
Yeah,
things in there you don't want.
that's right. What Mr. GPT might do.
But I asked it one time I said, I own an auto repair shop and I need a policy on XYZ. And that's all I said to it. And it produced a policy for me. And no joke, it was about 5 seconds. Just
Wow.
said,
And,
wow.
and was it good? Was
Yeah,
it?
it was
Yeah,
good.
yeah. Chat is
It
good about
was
that.
almost usable, just the way it was.
Yep. Just make a
Yeah.
few changes. Yeah. So that also is a great feature. So you're just really set up to really get some stuff in writing. And then you also will be set up very easily to distribute that to all of your team. And it's just a very robust and very powerful application. It's great.
Oh, now another feature of the app that I think is really important is it's one thing to issue a policy, whether it's electronically or on paper. It's another one to know that your team member, your employee read it, understood it, and will abide by it. Talk
Exactly.
about how the app helps in that aspect.
Well, you have the ability to create a survey, so you can actually ask a few questions to check if a person has grasped the policy. That's one of the best ways to check for understanding. But there's also a way where you can just simply, when you send it to them, you set it up and it has a due date, and then they have to at least have opened it. And then at least they went to the trouble to go and open the thing, and then you can at least make sure that that occurred. But those are the two ways. But you can keep track of assignments. They're called assignments, and you can, and then each individual that's a user in the app has something called My Assignments, and when you send them something, they can just check that My Assignments. There's also a feature in the app where you can set the setup to where they'll get notified. So they'll get a little email saying, oh, you've got something in your My Assignments, you need to check it out. And so then they'll go to the app, they'll open up their My Assignments, they'll see that, oh, the boss sent me a new policy on how to do a walk around the car or something at the end of the job or whatever. And then you can open it and you can read it. And then you can just see that they opened it, or you can attach a survey and then ask them a couple questions. I like to use like a spot check, like a real, like one good question, like pick one good question out of the whole policy that if they didn't read it, they wouldn't be able to answer. But if they did read it, they'd be able to answer it, that kind of a thing. And it
Mm-hmm.
could be like just one question. That is great. That is
Yeah,
a great feature.
yeah. And another interesting thing, having worked in shops and worked with shops for so long, you'll have situations where so much is verbal and so much is still in the owner's head. And they just assume that because it's logical to them how to go about do something.
Right.
right? Because this is the way I do it. It makes perfect sense. Why aren't you doing it this way?
Yeah.
And they've never written down the way they do it. And then an employee will go ahead if they have initiative. They'll handle a situation without bothering their boss. And sometimes the shop owner will be a little offended by the fact that they did this without asking,
Right.
but you never, ever squish someone for taking initiative. Now,
Exactly.
if you don't like what they did, realize you're the one who failed to write up how you want it done. But
Precisely.
sometimes they'll come up with something that you didn't think of. And you can now adopt that as your policy. And I want to tell you something, when a team member sees something that they created turn into shop policy, boy, does that add to ownership of that business by that employee.
Right. It creates there's no better word for it than ownership. They take responsibility for the business, and they know that it's one of the greatest ways to like lead. Like good leaders want to have their employees contribute. And obviously they contribute by doing their job, but when you let them contribute in other ways, like, hey, I've got a better way to do this. And I was always a big fan when I ran my own businesses of letting the person closest to the action write the policy. Now, I didn't let them publish the policy because it was my business and I had to sign off on it. But I've had guys who are really close to the action write policy for me, and then I would study it, read it, and if it made sense, then I would publish it.
Yeah, and it
And
didn't hurt some other area of the business.
Right, exactly, because I had to have a larger overview, but it makes a lot of sense because a lot of policy can sometimes be a little hit or miss if you're too detached from that scene, from that particular area. You might write a policy that makes sense if from 100 feet up or 100 miles up, but if you're right in the scene, like that doesn't make sense, that doesn't work that way, and you got to get that feedback, and that's where you get contribution with your whole team, and when it's in writing, you just create more of that. It's much more powerful that way.
I agree totally. And speaking of policy, for many years we had an apprenticeship called the Shop Policy Apprenticeship, which many shop owners have done. Well, that's morphed into the Playbook Apprenticeship now.
Hmm.
And the beauty of that is, on a policy apprenticeship, what you're writing is policy. But in a playbook, it could be a guideline, it could be a best practice, it could be a policy, it could be a procedure, it could be any of those things.
Correct.
And by having that option, you can adopt out of our playbook app a particular document that you like, or create a new one with the help of Chat GPT, and then start building your playbook, which is, I think, what you're doing with the club, aren't you?
Exactly. And I'm giving them homework, and I'm having them like go write a policy or go set this up, and they're actually making those steps. And then each time we get together, we see how they're progressing, and then they're eventually going to have a complete playbook. One
Right.
of the things you mentioned that I really like is this idea of having more than one type of reference other than a policy, because I always consider a policy to be like the law of the land. It's like
Hmm.
and when you're an owner, there's certain things where you go, look, this is there's no wavering on this. This is the law. This is how I want it's got to be done. And that could be a policy, but you can't make every single thing equal to everything else. It can't all be just as important. There has to be some stuff that you go, hey, I want you to have my hard-won knowledge because I've been a master tech for 35 years and I've been running my shop for 20 years. I know what to do, but I don't want it to be called a policy. I'm not ordering you to do it. That's kind of getting a little too micromanagey, right? You want to let your master techs and your guys who are knowledgeable find their own path for getting what they need to get done in your culture. So when you have things like policies and guidelines and best practices, then you can create this idea that not everything is as important as everything else. Some things are very important and some things are advices or they're just suggestions, and you can create that tier for yourself. And we don't even necessarily create that tier. You can call whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to call it. You want to call a policy the most important thing? Fine. The guideline, less important. Best practice, less important. You can do it however you want. And it allows for people to have a little bit more, I guess the best way to put it is they can be more intelligent about the way that they consume that knowledge out of your playbook to where they can use it better.
Sure. And you mentioned master techs, they love that autonomy,
Yes,
right? They don't want to
exactly.
be micromanaged. You
No,
don't need to use an iron fist with a master tech or a master service advisor.
I
You got
agree.
to give them that freedom.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's how, and that's how you do that.
Well, let me ask you, Tony, because we're running out of time. If someone wants to join your club, what do they do?
Well, there is a link, and I'm trying to see if I can find it. I thought I had it, but I don't know where it went. Let me see if I can find that link.
I think Carol
Uh,
put something in the chat.
if yeah, there is a link. If you're a Drive client and you're using our Drive app suite, you can go to the client portal and it's in there. Now for you guys who are Drive clients, the client portal has action workshops and master workshops. It's under the master workshop category, and you'll see it one event every month out till the end of the year. So if you just go there, you can sign up right there with your client portal like you sign up for any workshop. If you're not a client and you're interested, then you can actually use a link that she put in the chat, and you can just go there and you can just a little survey, you fill it out, and then we'll get back to you.
All right. Well, that sounds great. And Tony, I want to thank you for your time here and your expertise in the area of our newest of new services. And I love this idea of a club. It's very peer-to-peer and get to work together. And I hope to see this club grow into many chapters.
Exactly. That'll be great. Okay, well,
Yes.
thank you, Bob.
Next week's show, we have a special guest. It's Chris Probst from Bill Crestmore. She'll be joining us, and she's a very experienced owner and manager of auto shops, and we're going to be picking her brain and see what great things she has to say about running a shop.
Also, one other thing I want to say about Chris, because Chris, I consider a friend. She is also going to become one of our instructors. Now, we at Drive have always had a viewpoint where having very successful clients who are shop owners, when they want to give back, when they want to start really giving back to the industry and giving back to other shop owners and give people what they got from us, we like to have them have something that they can actually do. And she has an accounting background, and so we've enlisted her to become our instructor for our financial workshops.
Yeah, she'll be our teacher.
She's going to be great. And I'm excited about that. And this is that whole thing about when you get to stage 4, what are you going to do? When your shop's running so well that you don't have anything to do with your life, the thing
Yeah,
to
instead
do
of
is
going back in and destroying something that works really well by messing with it, we'll give you a
exactly.
new game to play.
Right. And for a lot of shops, it's about expanding into helping the industry. And I've seen some shop owners go to work at their local trade school or but many of our clients want to come help Drive. And we have many people that work at Drive that started out as shop owners and now work at Drive.
Yep.
And so she's not getting rid of her shop or anything. She's going to continue to run her shop,
It's fun.
but she's gonna become one of our instructors. And so we'll
Yep,
talk to her about that as well, because that's going to be a new adventure for her.
that's right. All right, Tony. Well, this has been very interesting. And everybody, thanks for joining us. And we'll see you next week on Drive Facebook Live.
We'll see you next week.